Oh, oh, we're rolling or something? Oh. Well, hi there. You know, as I was scrolling through my phone, I kind of forgot what video I was gonna make today. But I think it would be on like the title or something. But yeah, yeah, I've been working on some comic strips behind the scenes while I just stream and do other things and stuff like that. So, I got some ideas from other projects I have in mind, but I do want to maybe talk about more about my experience with what I learned so far about comic writing. Alrighty, well, when did I actually got my interest in my, whole comic script thingy? So I kind of take a look back to myself, and I thought what stuff that seeded something when I was a kid, and I used to come up with, like, creative ideas, so like any fictional worlds to play around with. I used to do a lot of like maybe some stick figure drawings or so many tiny cartoon like little funny little skit scenarios and stuff like that. And I kind of always liked exploring being in kind of control where and when, and you know how you play with your action figures and stuff like that, but instead you get to write it on paper to feel like they're believable to you, kind of stuff like that. And you kind of want to see how things go point A to point B, to how this person's journey of things go to beginning and to the end. So that kind of got my idea of how I started thinking about like creating story concepts of characters before I ended up funneling more deeper to my imagination as kind of learning about other things, like maybe a little bit about psychology and maybe a little bit about other things that people deal with in the world. Kind of also explore around like how other people's handle other things and how people handle their problems and solutions. And I kind of also like to build that into how I do my stories, as like kind of also fundamentally how to create characters to see how they think on their own and how they believably, realistically handle those solutions on their own while facing all the other trials and stuff like that. So it's almost like you're diving into the world and you just figure out, oh, I wonder what's this person's doing, what's his life story, kind of like a thing like that. And then you to see how his journey goes from point A to point B, and then it's kind of almost like, since it's all about him, it will be most like the protagonist and kind of like that. But I do have like other mediums I like to develop in the future of other ideas, that other stories I had, such as I did have like something with Mia for Metal Beat Souls, and then the other game development thing I'm currently working on, and maybe something more sci-fi. So I had to choose, like there's like a lot of lists and ideas I had to do. So most of them I would rather pause on that and just focus on really deeply on one at a time to what I really want to focus on, which is basically I ended up choosing Christella because I felt like I wanted to do a bit more alien or sci-fi story around that and create my own species of how it interacts and how I see how would it interacts into other faces and other novums of the story that I made so far. So I'm only going to choose to share about the knowledge that what I learned about when making comic scripts, but I don't want to share too much about on YouTube how the story so far with it, because it would be just like a deep separate video about it, and it's just going to be like way too deep. So I maybe think about talking more about that later in a different video, but of course eventually I do want to finish at least one issue once I like visualize it and finally draw it out and stuff like that, just to get feedback, just to know where other directions I want to go to. So we're just gonna talk about my work in progress. So let's talk about my writing process. So the first thing I initially do, since as a beginner I did some research and lookups and stuff like that, and then I ended up coming across past somewhere in my notes a few years back that there was a book that I picked up called The Art of Comic Book Writing. I think that was by Mark Keenis. It's up to you to take a look into it. I did like 80% of what the book did say, and it was a good head start for starting inspiration where I need to go. But I definitely did felt like 20% I could take a grain of salt, just to leave some room and opportunity for me to give myself a chance to explore other ideas and philosophy of writing comic book scripts rather than just following one person's steps, so I get an idea how to formulate my own style of learning how I develop my own comic scripts. And when I was looking around about other things, I noticed one very significant detail about the difference between slightly things about manga and American comics books was that funny thing is that they have more character rooms to add in their dialogue than English of American comics. But still, either way, you still would have to benefit mostly as the show overtelling. So visualizing stuff can help like save you a lot of time instead of like writing words and bubbles and stuff like that, which I do find when the in the manga version like books that I saw in the images and stuff, they tend to rely on a bit more heavy dialoguing, but they still kind of have some visual stuff going on, of course. But I do feel like there's some different scenarios of how they done things in tune and stuff like that. But what was satisfying that after learning to do some comic writing for quite some time, kind of learned about that, yeah, comic books are definitely more of a storyboard visual telling thing, but I wouldn't say that there's some... I mean, the benefits of that is that you do get to save a lot of money in telling your story. However, is that the only major con is that, well, in versus, and if you ever make an adaptation or a movie or adaptation from games, you can never it is true that you can never always beat the original novel books or the a comic paper format. It's always because that the pros about whenever having an adapt versions of animations or video games is that you get to explain a bit more stretch of what you're visualizing going on for your head. It's just that well, comics can excel showing you stuff, but they have to minimize and compress the detail enough to tell basically the audience what's going on without flooding in dialogue too much, because you gotta show what's actually going on and stuff. But in the shows and other movies and other adaptations, they have a chance to explore or fiddle with more of the imagination of what to show in a longer state to fill in the ad versus comics. So the benefit of certain animation shows that they can tell you some more things about the world in much more time frame in a consumer standpoint if someone chooses to watch. But adaptations can also create weird gaps every now and then if it's not handled correctly. Like, for example, if you were over explaining things what's going on, while sometimes you can easily just leave into the imagination of what you could fix in your world later on. But the truth is that for when it comes to like comics and stuff, you have to show point A to point B quickly as you can in one page, but you have to show it as an illustration so you have more ways to show what's actually going on than rather extending everything in there. Because at the end of the day, people are going to read comic books like quickly and just go by on their day and just do something else. They don't have time to like watch it read it for 24 minutes. They probably just want to try read it probably around 10 to 15 minutes. They probably may stay longer just to admire the art, but at the end they just want to understand the story as quickly as they can, but also have a fun experience time. And which also does help with condense or biting down like stories or arcs as well. Because if you got like many stories and arcs in your storytelling, then it's good that you can comms can condense that information down to reduce just to save time. And you can show a lot what's going on than just telling what's going to happen, because telling that would be like just much more of like unnecessary stretching. And then after I did all that research stuff, I ended up deciding to find some interested at the side notes that would help me benefit, like such as personality sheets. So the personality sheets I did found was much more Dungeons and Dragons based from a different person called CP Eris Art, which I ended up converting that person's template into like a Word document, so it would be easier just for me to take down notes and write things down, especially where I need to fill in some like alignments that does the character like is true neutral, chaotic good, lawful evil, and so on. And that other words and other biographies just add there to help me with the origins and figure out what my character's like and dislike, all that nice niche stuff. But this all of this stuff is like, that part's like optional, but it did help me because I felt that deep diving in my other characters, and other than, well, the main course is focused on the plot and stuff, does help where it would fit and make sense if it aligns to the character's personality based on the notes I had. But it also kind of bring out some other branches of possibilities, because when using my Word document template that I was based on that, I can plug it into like certain AI such as like DeepSeek just to talk and have it role play with me just for a little bit to see how it would sound and feel if that character kind of existed. Then I'll suggest like certain notes and tweaks that I felt maybe the character could go in a different direction or that other direction. And it does help like playing a lot of like concept in your head and mind. And it does save a lot like more of the block art that I do feel other times, because sometimes whenever you have like an art block, when you're kind of stuck like writing, like trying to get like a page or two in, sometimes you do need some ideas to help to get out of certain things. So I did felt like sometimes, I mean, there may be a little bit of some pros and cons with AI, but AI does help like kind of draft certain ideas, but I rather put my notes in as see how I feel how the story direction goes first before it tries to guess or anything, because you want to have like some control idea of mind of where you want to go, and then have it draw out like certain variants, and then if you do like this way, that way, you can edit and cut and or rewrite certain things that you want the story to go directions. And it does help like other things too, and then it does help toss feedback from each other. But I do also feel when learning in the process that the log lines were very essential to me, because as I just write that completely on my own with the log line how from A to B, because I feel more comfortable writing the one-page log line all by myself. So I would understand like a draft version of before writing the huge comic scripts of what I was going to write, because there's some other things and other times that when I was writing my comic stuff, I didn't originally plan in the first place, and it would only happen when I was in the middle of actually writing my comic script. And that logline does help just to keep an idea of like, if majority of the time the story may take directions, but sometimes if I add certain things into it in my comics, it may take the story like a complete 180 direction, or maybe some degrees of directions, or maybe creating a new character in the process. But whenever I do make some writings in the comic scripts, I feel that you should never set everything completely in stone, even though you written a logline. The logline is just a concept of the idea of how the story will mainly would go. But if you got to fill in like some kind of sub-conflicts or just to keep Act 1 and Act 2 entertaining a little bit, feel free to make a character in the middle of it. But sometimes there was some immediate characters that I thought of, but I didn't end up making like a personality sheet for them because they may have like minor or small roles to play with, but they did help like a captive interesting to help the story go on. Because and somewhere around in issue 1, I did need some kind of conflict other than just the main premises of the biology of Christella, and those other sub-conflicts did kind of help, but they did need to serve like a minor role that they're less likely not to return into like any of the issues again, because I feel like the main supporting characters and the main protagonist and antagonist should have like the personality note sheets, but if there are small minor roles that is some relation to it, or at least some pull to it, to at least have some clarity, it's just to help to save time to prevent like overwriting and stuff. Because, and also when I was making around like my issue 3 script, there was a character that I completely made from scratch after like the 5th or 6th page, because I felt like, oh wait, this would be a good introduction to bring other things going on, just for anything that they're happening in their some kind of lab or something like that, just to lead to the help with the supporting main conflict of the story. So since now I decided to, after written issue 4 of my comic script, I think I'm gonna pause on the writing, because I think I do want to keep it by arc of the comic script overall, so I have like a nice good draft overall when I get started with the future visual development and the future art that I will make. So eventually at some point I will start on the concept art and the other asset lists I have in mind that I've written down to figure out what my props and hero assets and stuff. So once I make the visualize the comics, it would be easier on my end. So my selective decision, I choose to keep the comic black and white, and it's not just the mood and scenario that, yeah, I do want to have a focus niche on primarily the sci-fi things, but I also had like some horror and thriller going on, so it kind of would make sense that I could or can do with black and white, even though I had my art style kind of be modularly evolve, where I could choose to have nice colors, but also the line art does support the black and white kind of feel. But the real reason I just want black and white is just that since I'm working on other side projects and stuff, I do want to keep the production much more efficient on my end. So not only I'm progressing to move forward, I can save some time on my end, because coloring is another set of hours to do, and it could delay the other things that I wanted to do, just to mark down my checklist for my other stuff, because I got like other things I want to create, but I want to also maintain the quality as well. So that was like my own strategic decision. And as for like the page layouts and stuff, I'm not going for any manga or any specific art style or anything. I'm just basically going for much more of my own kind of like style of how I want to write and interpret the ideas, but with also feedback in mind whenever I release certain stuff. But I have to start releasing certain things in order to get that right feedback, just to help update my work in the future. So it is going to be much more of a mature and gritty kind of style comics, and much more of a mature audience feel as well. But the comics will be American left to right. So because that's where I'm used to at, and so yeah, pretty much. Alright, so I'm going to talk about the things that I wish I knew much earlier as well. So it's just an aftermath flashback of what I could probably do better next time when I do write another like an arc of papers of stuff. So just to keep myself in mind when writing comic scripts, that about my personality sheets, they do work primarily for protagonist and antagonist scenarios, but just be careful not to overwrite or add other personality sheets that may not be unnecessary for the story to go, as the main goal is to get the comic scripts done, and other than having over notes of stuff. But I kind of did get a little carried away with the other personality sheets. It's because I kind of didn't enjoy figuring out likes and dislikes, interests, and then simulating them into like other different chat bots to see how it would try to pretend and roleplay, which was kind of funny in certain moments when I had with it. But there were some things that I tried to improve on and make better. It was just a little funny gimmick for me to do that, but it was kind of a little hilarious just to have now to someone to pretend to be something that you want to roleplay for something. But then you also got to watch out for certain things that it just be too little mellow, and then you just gotta like tune it just to make it sound better. But what I also kind of also learned since I'm also working with other side projects and just being a little bit generalist and stuff like that, if I wanted to get the comic scripts done a bit more faster, that if I just single-handedly just decided to, alright, I'm gonna cater this time for like 1 month only just to work on just the comic scripts, or maybe 2 months only just straight up, but that would technically take me like 70% extra to like 70% more speed of efficiency to get that done a lot more faster, because we end up working on that like one at a time. But the con is that means I would end up pushing back the other side projects until way a little bit later. But I did like also working on side projects, because even though I get 30% divided attention from them, it does refresh my mind when I come back and forth to other projects, because if you're staring too much on the same project too long, you kind of get your eyes kind of muddy and rinsed, and you kind of won't see the errors of your problems until you take a break from that project and then you come back to it. But having me generally working on other projects back and forth gives me that time frame to come back to revisit that project and figure out more problems with the script itself, and find those solutions much faster to solve and input better feedback onto my own work. So I guess it is a kind of a pros and cons thing, but I can't say for sure if it is. I mean, it depends on what type of person you are first. But using learning pacing tools did help me to make it easier to get out of art blocks. So, but the only way to get out make the art blocks much more better efficient with AI is that you would have to human write your own ways and learn how to write as you go for yourself. Because the more you develop and rules and the type of template that you want to write for your comic script, since comic scripts are basically Wild West for the way you want to set up your templates, but unless you work with a group of people, that's a different story. But you can make those templates for yourself to make it easier. But the only way to have AI to understand the way you write is that you must humanly write until you get a better proficient at it. And then once it has enough data for yourself to write in your own writing style, then it can get a better idea of how you would write. And then all you need to do is do some minor tweaks and stuff like that to edits to veer to what your vision wants, and it just makes it easier on stuff like that. So, I mean, you would have to be careful how it would say certain things, but you also have to be careful on a certain how you would structure that as well, because it can pick up your notes real fast, but it won't always be a success. So sometimes in better scenarios, you're better off to human write that script over using AI sometimes. And also my page count, so ideally I did want 25 to 30 pages, but as I was proofreading my own scripts, I felt that there's some tightening spaces that I want the beats to at least have some chance to breathe. So realistically, I ended up averaging between 30 to 40 pages, but at longest I wasn't over 50 pages. I'll be satisfied as it is, because there's always room to figure out other things that can be condensed down. But if it's over condensed, you also gotta balance that out as well. But I've seen some comic scripts that there's other reasons why maybe if you were, say for example, writing for something for a group of people, that you definitely do need certain pages to be at that as the budget. And then sometimes, however, in order to fit the budget, it may hurt the story depending on how the complexity of that story is and back and forth. But it's still possible to ideally to hit 25 to 30 pages. But I think that's something to work on me in the future to... I think it's just a slightly skill issue just to kind of bring that a little bit down. So if I can in the future, that'll be great on my end, because that means I'll have to worry about like 25 to 30 things to draw on. And it would be helpful for me so I can save time and work on other stuff too as well. Yeah, but it also depends for variable reasons, but once I get more used to writing certain ways and stuff like that oftenly, then and figure out what's the best optimized way to help me understand certain things when I'm writing the style of my own script, then I think it would be much more easier as time goes on. But mostly, yeah, to just fine-tune constant pacing and stuff, and yeah, keep working and summarizing much more better clarity. Alrighty, so since I did a lot of writing this past year, I plan to pause on the Crystella story for a couple months just to come back with fresh eyes. But I did, as I mentioned before, created a checklist for the concept art that I kind of had. I can draw like at my own time, but I think I'm gonna wait on that until I get like there's another minor project that I have in mind that I wanted to do first before I get back into that. Even though regarding that, I do plan to make future illustrations and future merchandise for that reason. But I do plan to redesign one of my business cards, which I can show you real quick. Just give me 1 sec. Alrighty, resume recording. 3, 2, 1. Which is something like this. I mean, also I have like a QR for like that, and then have like that. But I'm only like kind of changing it up a bit because I did like, I mean, the art style is good, but just my art style design changes over time. I feel like my art progressed a lot since then, so I kind of want to fiddle around with other hero characters that on the thing, and I want to try more of the design background to be based on white, so it has much more better cropping stuff wise, and so you can avoid like certain bleeding lines. It just makes it much more easier, and also to write on if someone needs to write down notes or something real quick to on the card as well. But I do plan to also want to think about making maybe a V model for one of the skull avatar that I had in mind, and then just think about maybe play around with that just to at least to learn something new, what I could possibly do, and maybe have like a little demo trial to understand Godot engine, and once I have something to learn on for that too. I think it would be like a fun experience too as well, that because the 3D model, I could make like a bunch of like loopable animations and also kind of like GIFs for emojis or poses for emojis, and it's just much more efficient that way to me, since I do know a strong background in 3D art, and it does save a lot of time than just drawing every 2D art that. So I'm definitely gonna do 3D for once I start the emotes and stuff, and just to also improve my social media art, which is the channel art and the Be Right Back streams and the stream starting soon. I think my 3D knowledge will definitely help with that too as well, and we can have some nice interesting lighting or certain particles and stuff like that, and it just makes it much more personalized than just leaving the old art that I had back in like 2021 or 2022, because I think my mindset of how I do my art pretty much changed since then. Well, that's it. So thank you for tuning in and listening. This must be better off if you... I should probably have said this in the beginning, but I'll probably put like captions in the beginning, like to listen to this also like almost like a podcast, because this is much more like a video log and just me talking about my internal thoughts and stuff. So hopefully this is something nice to listen to background, and I do love to hear some comments down below to see what's your input and feedback and your opinion about things, and yeah, we can talk about that like a little bit and stuff like that. So maybe, who knows, if you do know some stuff about other things, I mean, we can have like a discussion, have an open-ended conversations to comment down below. I mean, if you're discovering, trying to learn as I go too, I mean, learning this will always be a never-ending thing. So don't stop learning to always learn other things than just the main thing that you like to do, because could be some things out there that could be much more intrusive and more pulling to get ideas and inspiration from. But yeah, thank you for tuning in, and peace.